Just trying to get a run of thought here from Goody as to where he's at in the urgency of a championship and what needs to happen. Here is Goody's response.
You always have some disappointments in the year. I think for me, the thing that's been on my mind, I think as we've concluded this season, is we need to continue to ramp up our sense of urgency. These opportunities don't come. The life of a player in the National Football League is not very long. We got a bunch of good guys in that locker room. We got a bunch of talented guys in that locker room, and I think it's time that we start competing for championships, right? And I think they're ready. I think they're, like I said, I think they are wired right. I think that group is the kind of guys that can do that. But at the end of the day, you got to go do it. And we fell short in some areas this year that, like they always are every year, a little frustrating. But at the same time, I didn't think they blinked. And so I'm excited about the group, but. The sense of urgency, not getting complacent. Some of these guys have now proven themselves to be NFL football players and have attained that. But what's out there for us as a team that we're willing to commit to and sacrifice for, and so that's kind of the. If I'm looking at one thing, that'd be it.
Thank you, guys.
Right.
Goody, courtesy of Packers.com. Brad Nortman, as a former NFL player who's had tough conversations with GMs in the offseason as your career ended that way. I hate to bring that up. Sorry, on a Friday.
Wow. Thanks, Ben.
What do you take from that?
What a way to phrase that. Well, it's of all the crazy things that Goody said yesterday, and we're going to get into some crazy ones, he's absolutely right. He is absolutely right with this. This Green Bay Packer team, yes, they're young. Yes, they are, again, the youngest team in the NFL and one of the youngest teams to ever make the playoffs. But boy, oh boy, they need to wake up because this window is closing and it's closing fast. It's not just staying open in perpetuity. It's not like, oh, we have Jordan Love, we have our franchise quarterback, we have 15 years to win a championship. It doesn't work that way, guys. Goody's exactly right. The life of an NFL player is short. It's shorter than you think it is. I know that's how I felt. That's how everyone in that roster is going to feel. And when you look at it and when he describes his sense of urgency, that's exactly what you're going to need to have. Because if the Packers are lucky enough to have Jordan Love start for 15 years, right, like Rodgers and Favre, I've talked about this before, but his career will be characterized by chapters, right? Usually probably like 3 5-year chapters of, Jordan Love's early teams, the teams in the middle of his career, and his late career teams. Favre had the same thing. Rodgers had the same thing. This first iteration of the Green Bay Packers, led by LaFleur and Jordan Love, guys, their window's already halfway over. You're talking about a 4 to 5 year window where you have this same collective group of guys that strive together before they get old, before they get expensive, before they move on. And when you look at these draft classes, when did Goody start to cook in the draft classes? It was 2022. Well, those guys are entering their, 22, 23, 24?
Fourth year, and they will have to pick up the fifth-year options of Quay Walker and Devontae Wyatt, which Jason Wilde thinks that they will.
So decisions will already have to be made on these guys that we think are young. So when I look at Goody and he says we need a sense of urgency to win a championship, I totally agree with him. As long as the Packers have LaFleur and Love and Goody, for all of their blemishes, I'm optimistic. But to be a championship team, you need everything to come together and you need that sense of urgency, and it closes quicker than you think. So there's absolutely a sense of urgency. This iteration will not last as long as you think it will.
Wow, Brad. You really I like how aggressive you are with saying the window is halfway closed, but also at the same time, this is the second year of Jordan Love's bigger signed contract.
And I'll just add before I let you and Kyle go, the contract only gets more expensive. So the cap goes up, sure.
But they can also restructure and re-extend and remove things. And I don't know. I heard you. I want to hear Kyle.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree with what Goody is saying with a sense of urgency, but I think Goody needs to understand that message that he has, he needs to make sure that message also resonates with himself, because he can talk about this group of guys needing to have a sense of urgency, but he also said that, this group may be wired, but they're wired right, but they fell short. Well, Goody needs to evaluate why they fell short. Goody talked about them being complacent, right? Not being complacent. I hope Goody is not complacent. So all the words that he is saying and he is preaching to the players in the team, he needs to make sure he is preaching it to himself. Because if Goody does not have a sense of urgency with the offseason, because as Brad said, this window won't be open forever. If he is complacent and he says, you know what? Let's keep drafting and developing. And he does not bring in guys, impact guys like a Xavier McKinney, impact guys like a Josh Jacobs. Yeah, go and repeat. You found success, man. You found success. So don't get complacent. Keep building on what you found. Find guys that fit this roster that can allow for you to basically clean up the areas where you fell short. So it falls on Goody, to me, more than anything else, to make sure he is putting together a team that actually has a legitimate chance and shot to win a Super Bowl. Because let's be honest, after watching this football team this year, we all know the Green Bay Packers didn't have a shot, man. When you look at the football teams, like even the Rams who are playing, the Rams have veteran guys. They have guys who played in Super Bowls on that team. You look at the Detroit Lions, they went to an NFC Championship game last year, right? And you go on the other side, you got Lamar, you got Pat Mahomes, and you got Josh Allen, right? You have guys who have been there before, right? The Packers are just now ascending there. It is his job to ensure, as they are ascending, he is sending reinforcements to ensure that this team has no holes and they cannot fall short. So for me, yes, the guys need a sense of urgency, but at the end of the day, it starts with Brian Gutekunst.
I think this is the biggest offseason and the most important offseason for Brian Gutekunst. Because Ed Policy is coming in. Complicated fellow chimed in. Ed Policy obviously is taking over for Mark Murphy as the president moving forward. If you're used to working with someone, and to all accounts, I feel as if that it seems like Mark Murphy and Brian Gutekunst seem to be on the same page. They seem to be in that suite together at Lambeau Field as no free ads, but there's always a Diet Coke right in front of Goody when they pan to him. This is the most important offseason Goody's going to have because of how are they going to thread the needle of knowing that some of the guys that they drafted in 22, sure, they may get fifth-year options. Like if he gives those, he's putting a stamp of approval on Quay Walker and Devontae Wyatt that you're going to need big impacts in year 4 and year 5. You have great guys that we've mentioned that are up-and-comers from this draft class, especially on the defensive side of the football. Evan Williams, excited about. Edgerrin Cooper, star in the making, and Javon Bullard with upside. So then you talk about what they did from a free agency standpoint. They brought in Josh Jacobs. They brought in Xavier McKinney. They signed Jordan Love to a deal in which, like, you want him to have a next step again after the growing pains of last year. But how do you marry the youth with the free agency, with Jordan Love, with the wide receiver conversation of not knowing if they have any? Like, how do they put this all together right now to do what he's saying and become a championship team? In order to do that, he's going to have to go outside of his comfort zone. He may have to bring in somebody older than he likes to have on the roster through free agency. He might need to make a trade utilizing an asset from the draft that he typically wants to keep himself to make that pick. So I am fascinated to see how Brian Gutekunst handles this offseason because I think it will be a lasting impact in his imprint of if this team takes a big next step next year, Ed Policy is going to be like, great job, Goody. You have my full confidence. If they take a step back in his first year, that opens up the door for his employer to say, whew, I just got here. I don't like what I'm seeing. I'm going to go get my guy as the president that I want to work hand in hand with. Not that Ed Policy hasn't been along the ride, and he's obviously been groomed for this opportunity. But when you're in charge, you want the people you most believe in the positions below you to help have your message and the message from GM down reach the ultimate goal. This is a massive offseason for Goody. I can't state that enough.
Well, and that's why it's interesting for the Green Bay Packers and why Goody said this specifically, right? Because when you look at the Packers' usual mode of operation, right, they're usually very forward thinking. Let's go young. Let's draft a quarterback before we even need one. Like almost nobody in the NFL does that. They did it with Rodgers. They did it with Love. They like to go young. They like to structure contracts in a way that they can get out. The Packers are always thinking ahead. It's like that person in your life that's always thinking about the future, right? There's that other person in your life that thinks only about the present. There's no thought about the future at all. And you have to find yourself a little bit in between that, right? For now, Brian Gutekunst, like you said, Kyle, and you said, Ben, there needs to be a little bit of like shrinking that timeline. We can't think always about 2027 and building for the far future, we need to take that and we need to marry that with winning today. It's not easy and very few teams can pull it off, but the Packers are structured to do that.
Yeah, and I believe in Goody. Like, I truly do, and I hope Goody has that reflection point where he's able to adjust things like we saw last year. But, Ben, you are absolutely right about this being the most important offseason. If he sits on his hands and he does nothing, every Packers fan should be frustrated because we know, will this team take a step in the right direction next year? We believe so, right? We believe that they went through some bumps. They had a great highs last season, and then this past season they had some lows, right? They went through controversy. They went through rough patches. But the great thing about that is we know there's going to be some growth. But what we all know, as the team is assembled right now, they still have missing pieces. So if the Packers do nothing but draft guys and plug them in, the Packers will be sitting in the exact same situation come next January where fans are upset and disappointed and talking about whose fault was it? Is Jordan Love this? The defense that? They're missing playmakers, and that all really will fall on the shoulders of Goody.
I think it's going to be fascinating to see what move he makes that is the one that we are able to say, this is the biggest move he made, and is it big enough for them to take the next step? Because something big has to happen. It could be through the draft. It could be trading up. It could be through free agency. It could be through a trade. What is that move that Goody is going to make to say, hey, that sense of urgency that I just mentioned in my press conference, I have to put my money where my mouth is as well and help provide Matt LaFleur the resources to have a championship caliber team. 800-990-3776. Whew. Do you think Goody can figure that all out?